number one thing you want to always do is make sure the rifle is unloaded and is safe to handle. All weapons I'm handling here have been double checked. They are empty and they are safe to handle. So we're going to go ahead and start by removing the rear sight from the rifle. You'll take and use a brass drift, place it in the center of the dovetail, take a little ball peen hammer and tap it until it finally comes out of the barrel. You always want to drive it from the left side out to the right side. Once you have your rear sight removed, then you want to take a screwdriver and take out the link pin retaining screw, which is the large screw at the front upper left side of the receiver. It should come out quite easily. Just be careful not to booger it up because you want to save these parts if you decide to put it back later to its original configuration. Now you take the sack that the parts all come in. This particular rail is still in the white. It has not been anodized yet because we thought it might show up better on the video by doing this. It also comes with an attachment pack of all the screws and bolts that you'll need to put this rail on. So we'll take that out of the sack as well. Now the first thing we want to do is to take the little dovetail block out of the sack, and we'll just empty all the parts out right here. Make sure you keep them very close by so that you don't lose any of them. But you'll take the dovetail block, and this is one of the last few things that we did a little modification on this second generation. This block now is 181 thousandths thick instead of 170. We found out that some of the smaller scopes and sight optics didn't have quite enough sight adjustment internally to be able to zero the block. So we made the block a little bit thicker to make it much easier to get the sight to zero. Now install the block from the left back to the right, just like you took the other one out from the right to the left. Select the longer set screw. It has a knurled end on one side and it's 3/8 of an inch long. It uses a 3/32 Allen wrench in order to put that in. Just set it down into the sight block and run it down until it only just barely touches the barrel. You don't want to cinch this down at this point because we're going to need to slide this back and forth a little bit to get it centered here in a little bit. So then we'll take and put the sight rail on top of that. This being a post 64, it'll go in that front hole. Also being a post 64, we want to select the proper screw that goes back here. It's a 1/4 by 32 thread as opposed to just a 200 thousandths as this one here is still in the white for the earlier model guns. So make sure you have the right one so that you don't booger up the threads again. Insert it into the hole. Again, you just snug down this screw because we will be removing it a little bit later in order to put a drop of Loctite on this. Right now we want to just snug it down, not tight, just snug, because we want to line up the groove with the front sight of the rifle. That's why we left this loose in the front up here. So what we're going to do is take the rifle out, look down there, line up the sights so that the front sight is right in the middle of that groove. That way we know we have the rear sight lined up as close to center line of the bore as we possibly can. Once you have determined that you have the rail as centered as you possibly can on the sights, take your set screw and back it back out a little bit. Take a drop of thread locker, put around the base of the screw, and tighten it back down and cinch it down to where it is very snug but not so tight that you will strip these threads. Just bring it down really good and snug right there. The same here. You would back this screw out. Now you can take the rail back off of the gun and insert the little 5/16 long set screw into the end tapped hole on the end of the rail. Now it's easier to do it with it off than trying to do it with it on the gun. Take one of the 5/16 hex nuts and put it on the screw as well. Run it down to where it's just barely a nut full of thread on there, and then we have it set where it's ready to put back on the gun. Once we do that, we put the rail back over the mounting stud, take the mounting screw, the specialty screw that goes in the link pin retain hole, put a drop of thread locker on that, put it into the hole, and run it down to where it is, again, as tight as you can get it without stripping the threads. You want to just have it really super snug. And again, just good and snug. Take the other 5/16 hex nut out of the sack, put it over the front mounting stud using a 5/16 nut wrench. We will run that down after putting a drop of thread locker on it, and run it down just as tight as we can without worrying about stripping the threads. Now we want to adjust the little set screw at the end of the rail out here. You want to run it down to where it just touches the rail, but not force the rail up. It basically is going to be the thickness of the nut is going to be the distance that you're going to have. Take a 5/16 wrench, hold that on there, and then lock it down with the wrench. That will lock that set screw in place. You can put thread locker on it if you want to, but with the lock nut underneath of there acting as support, you really don't hardly need to. The rail is now totally installed, ready to put on any kind of optic that you want to put on here. I'm going to say most optics, because some people said, well, it didn't mount my 3-to-9 rifle scope. No, it's not designed for regular rifle scopes because they don't have the eye relief you need. If you put a scout scope on here, it will mount on here quite handily, and one of the easiest ways to do this now is to use an extended front ring. Now we have the extra distance on our rail that we can use an extended ring and have plenty of room for almost any scout scope or the IER scope that you want to put on here. So that would be the way that you would mount your scope on here. These particular mounts, these rings are made by Millet. They actually are windage adjustable, so you even get a little more adjustment that way. Some rings are not windage adjustable, so you don't have to worry about that, but just why you want to make sure you center the rail as close to center as you possibly can. The other thing that this rail was originally really designed for was to put optics like red dots on here. The neat thing about using this longer rail, nowadays you can put a red dot back here. You can actually come out here in the front and put a laser in front of that and actually have a double sight system on your rifle, to where if you want a laser without having to use the red dot, you can use a laser to zero in, or you can turn the laser off if you don't want people to know where you're at and just use the red dot. You actually use this in combination. They even make offset rails now that will fit on here, and you can put a white light on out here on the side, and you can accessorize these about any way you can accessorize an M4 carbine nowadays. This rail brings a little old Model 94 right up to the 21st century nowadays. The other type of sight that can go on here, like I have mounted on this pistol here, is what they call a reflex sight. And there's plenty of room to mount those on this rail now. So you can use reflex sights, red dots, lasers, white lights, anything that you really want to put on here will fit on this rail. In finishing up, I want you to know that we do now have a website on the internet. It will be linked up to this video. Just click on the link at the end. It'll take you directly to our website. All the purchasing information will be on there. We're now not only taking just PayPal, but we'll also have credit cards for domestic and international. So anyone will be able to use their regular MasterCards from now on. So please go to our website for all purchasing information and any other information that you might want to know about this, and all of our contact information will be on there as well. Thank you.